March 1st is the big deadline here. That's when the funding runs out for 5 government agencies. And if it feels like we've been here before, that's because we have. It's been a long and rocky road for this funding. President Joe Biden first requesting it way back in August. The court's next decision day is scheduled for Thursday. Typically, they have all of their rulings released by the end of June. Now, to remove Mayorkas, it would take a 2/3 vote in the Senate. And with Democrats holding a majority in the upper chamber, it remains highly unlikely that Mayorkas will be removed. Over the weekend, President Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, is planning to make a visit to both Saudi Arabia and Israel. These are the court documents right here, which at times read like a spy thriller. It is a question of whether these voters will come home. Will they come back to former President Donald Trump when it comes to the general election? The campaign is transitioning a little bit. They announced that 2 senior advisors were going to be moving out of the White House and towards the campaign. I spoke with an activist who was underwhelmed because they were saying, why not full decriminalization? Why not legalization? So why stop at just scheduling it down? Does the Biden administration see this as sort of the next big frontier of this abortion fight? How realistic is a 2-state solution in this moment when obviously things are so divisive? If he brings that to the floor, it wouldn't trigger the motion to vacate.
You're asking me the same question that I've just told you I'm not going to answer.
That's a no, it won't, or yes, it will.
I'm not going to answer a question. I'm just not giving that deadline.
As protests continue nationwide, new polling from Axios suggests that the war in Gaza might not actually be a driving issue for many younger voters. They surveyed some 1,200 college students and found that just 13% ranked the war in Gaza as a top issue. On Wednesday, the National Transportation Safety Board announced that their investigators boarded the cargo ship for the first time and were able to retrieve the data recorder, which is essentially the black box for that cargo ship. When you look at the video and the photos, it could kind of look like a toy ship. It helps to put some context. That ship is the length of more than 3 football fields, and the bridge was 1.6 miles long.
Do you plan to bring the Ukraine bill to the floor?
We're working on all those things right now.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson still not saying whether he'll bring a massive foreign aid bill to the floor. The $95 billion funding package cleared the Senate in February, allocating $60 billion for Ukraine in their fight against Russia and over $14 billion for Israel. It would also provide billions of dollars in humanitarian aid for Gaza. The bill enjoyed bipartisan support in the Senate, backed by Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Speaker Johnson has sat on his hands for nearly 2 months now as the supplemental package collects dust.
Johnson would likely need the votes of Democrats to pass the measure because many Republicans, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, oppose it. And that could endanger his job as Speaker. In March, Greene filed a motion to oust Johnson from leadership after he worked with Democrats to finalize the new federal budget. She held off from bringing it up for a vote back then, but is not ruling out a vote now.
I'm not laying out a red line or a timing on this.
Speaking with Spectrum News on Tuesday, Greene declined to say whether she would seek Johnson's ouster if he tries to pass Ukraine funding.
We have a Speaker of the House right now that is absolutely serving the uniparty and serving the Biden administration's agenda.
And Ukraine funding is far from the only item on the agenda. The impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is expected to move forward very soon. And on top of that, Congress will likely need to act on a controversial surveillance law called FISA and emergency relief funding for the Baltimore Bridge disaster. Reporting here on Capitol Hill, this is Evan Koslof, Spectrum News.
You know, it's an open drug market here.
Barb Williamson is walking us through the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia. She runs The Way of Life, a network of recovery and sober living homes.
So we come down here monthly and we try to feed the people. We try to help them get wound care.
It's an effort that's personal for Williamson. After all, she was an addict herself until she got clean a dozen years ago.
I know if I can get sober, anyone can.
Now, Williamson is sounding an alarm about a dangerous new substance called xylazine.
The drug is called xylazine.
It's an emerging deadly drug threat.
The powerful animal sedative, sometimes called tranq, causes a strong high and can lead to severe wounds and the rotting of skin by the injection site. It could even lead to amputations. And unlike opioids, tranq does not respond to the overdose reversing drug Narcan.
People would be coming into detox and the medication that was given to them wasn't working. It's so sad to see. They're just waiting to die.
And stories like these from big cities and small towns across the country are getting the attention of lawmakers in Washington, and that includes right here at the White House.
If we thought fentanyl was dangerous, the combination of fentanyl would xylazine or tranq has made it much more lethal and much more destructive.
Dr. Rahul Gupta runs the Office of National Drug Control Policy and says the numbers show that xylazine is becoming a nationwide problem. The Drug Enforcement Administration provided Spectrum News with new numbers showing that xylazine has been found in 48 states and D.C., and that it was detected in 30% of all the fentanyl powder that the DEA tested last year. And mixing the substances often has deadly consequences. Preliminary numbers from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show over 5,600 people died from overdoses, including xylazine, in the 12 months leading up to September of last year. That was a jump of nearly 30% from the year before. To address this emerging threat, the White House released a national plan last summer.
There's definitely work to go, but I could tell you without the designation, we would not be where we are today.
Gupta says through this national plan, they've been able to unlock grant money for research and for xylazine test strips. He also says that the plan has empowered law enforcement, giving them more authority to intercept xylazine at ports of entry. Gupta says they're also looking into changing how xylazine is classified. Right now, it's approved for use by the Food and Drug Administration for veterinary use. That's despite the possible dangers.
Let's do this with a sense of urgency. I would have liked to seen it done yesterday.
And there are new efforts to address tranq on Capitol Hill as well.
Hey man, I'll take a common sense bill any day of the week.
Late last year, the Tranq Act, sponsored by freshman lawmaker Mike Collins, was signed into law, ordering an increase in research of xylazine. And this year, another bill called the Stop Tranq Act. It's been proposed in the Senate and would require the State Department to better track where the drug is coming from.
Multiple spots all up and down Kensington Avenue.
Back in Philadelphia, Williamson is hopeful that this growing awareness in Washington will make a difference in her community.
There needs to be more help.
In Washington, I'm Evan Koslof, Spectrum News.
History's watching. The world is watching.
The reason Donald Trump's dominating the race, what he did for us, and what he'll do for us.
The campaign ads, just like these, have already begun.
What a great crowd!
Costing candidates, when all is said and done, billions of dollars by Election Day.
What we're seeing right now, it's record-breaking numbers.
Matthew Foster from American University has been tracking the fundraising numbers for years and says they've been going up, election after election, for decades.
It's like an arms race. I mean, every party has to outraise the other. There isn't one advantage to one party. The question is this the best way to spend billions and billions of dollars?
And of course, it's not just presidential elections where we're seeing big spending. If you take a look at races for House seats, Senate seats, and for the White House, according to Open Secrets, we had some $14.4 billion in total spending in 2020, more than doubling what we saw in 2016. And now the money is flowing yet again. Campaign finance reports show that heading into February, President Joe Biden's campaign had about $56 million in cash on hand. Former President Donald Trump's campaign had just about $30.5 million. And Republican Nikki Haley's war chest had just about $13 million. Big numbers, no doubt. But Foster says it's actually lagging way behind 2020 numbers, when at this point in the campaign, Trump had a whopping $92.6 million in the bank.
It's getting to the point where the resources are thinning out. There's only a finite amount of money, and I do believe that 2020 may have been the high watermark.
But the money heading to campaigns tell us just part of the story. More and more money is being funneled to outside spending groups.
When you look under the hood, do you think a lot of people would be surprised to see how money gets to campaigns?
I think so.
Sarav Ghosh is the director of federal campaign finance reform at the Campaign Legal Center in Washington, and says to understand what's going on, it's helpful to separate the money in federal campaigns into two buckets. In one bucket, you've got the money raised by the candidates and the national political parties. And these have strict contribution limits. For example, individual donors can give no more than $3,300 per candidate in every primary and general election. But then there's the second bucket, where you'll find outside groups like super PACs. These groups are raising millions of dollars for candidates, running ads and sending mailings for them. But they're not supposed to be coordinating any of this with the campaign. And these super PACs have no contribution limit at all.
Literally, the sky's the limit. The depth of your pocketbook is the limit.
And the numbers show that these super PACs are gearing up to spend big yet again. The main super PACs for Biden, Trump, and Haley had just over $50 million combined in the bank to start the year. Ghosh argues that all this outside money is bad news for average Americans and for democracy.
They are more and more being pushed to the back by the wealthy, the special interests who have the money and are looking to influence the political process.
Efforts to reform the campaign finance system and bring more transparency to donations have gone nowhere in Congress. And although 2024 may not end up setting another record for campaign spending, we can say that billions of dollars will be spent to influence your vote. In Washington, I'm Evan Koslof, Spectrum News.